Hi, this is Ancient Realms, and welcome back to the Deadly 60 podcast. And joining me on this journey is the Cobra Effect.
Hello, yes, I'm Dylan. I'm a wildlife ecologist and beaver researcher. If you enjoyed this video, you can find me over at the Cobra Effect on Instagram and YouTube. I am back to hijack Ancient Realms, and I believe today we are going to be going all the way to Madagascar, is that right?
Yes, we're continuing our Deadly 60 journey in no particular order and going straight to the island of Madagascar. And I understand that this is a return visit for you.
I am super excited to be going back to Madagascar today with Steve Baxter and the crew, as it is one of my absolute favourite places in the world. I was really lucky that I was able to go there as part of a field school with my university and conduct some surveys in Madagascar earlier this year. We started off in the capital city of Antananarivo. We were able to then go and visit the national park Andasibe, which among other things is best known for its population of Indri and Shifax. These are two incredible, massive, brightly coloured lemurs that are very close to extinction in parts of Madagascar, but thanks to some fantastic conservation efforts, they are doing fantastically well in the national park. The majority of the trip we spent in the Eastern Highlands in an area called Shinjarive and Bleombe National Park. And that's super cool because it's a really remote and understudied site. It's very, very high elevation, almost cloud forest, but not quite. It is just regular rainforest. And we got to see all kinds of cool stuff.
Sounds like you had a really good time there.
I mean, I got to hold a mouse lemur and a tenrock. And I got to fight a snake, which, I mean, that's happened a lot, but this was a Malagasy snake.
All the more reason to be excited, yeah. And you're right that Madagascar is an amazing place. It's also one of my favourite places in the world, just because of the sheer volume of weird and interesting wildlife that's there.
If you had to pick a favourite Malagasy species, what would it be?
Well, I think you know the answer to that, Dylan.
Yeah, I asked that question and then I immediately realised what a stupid question it was. But we're going to be meeting the species later on in the episode.
Yes, we are. That's a little sneak preview. I'll keep quiet until then, so you can find out what that is. But yes, there's a good species.
Definitely is, but I think that is enough of us rambling about all the reasons we love Madagascar. Let's get going with Stevie V.
Absolutely. Let's go. So Steve is today in Madagascar, which is a shame that he only went to it once in the main series of Deadly 60, but there was a spin-off called Deadly 60 Mission to Madagascar, I think.
Deadly Mission Madagascar, which I auditioned for.
Yeah, how far did you get with that?
So I had to send in an application and I got invited to audition, and that was as far as I got. And it was like a full day. I had to do a bunch of like screen tests and team building exercises, and I got to meet Michaela Strachan.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Like two truths and a lie, so that was fun. I was only like 13, so it was the best thing ever.
That sounds very cool. Yeah, it must have been pretty fun.
Yep.
That was an interesting little show. I don't think I ever watched all of it, but it did look very fun.
Shafak. Is that a Shafak?
That was a Shivak, yeah.
I should know this.
Well, there's about 4 or 5 species, I think, of them, and that was I'm gonna butcher how we pronounce this. This is Verreaux's Shifak, I think. A lot of this is stock footage, of course. Deadly 60 uses a lot of that in between the segments when they're looking at the animals to introduce them. And he's in Corindi today, which is a small patch of native forest that still remains in Madagascar, where some of the rare animals still live.
It stalks around these forests and bites the faces off its victims.
Did he just say it bites the faces off its victims? Is that true?
Well, I think in the right angle, maybe it would, yes.
But that's not like a predatory strategy, surely.
I don't think it is. No, it's not like a jaguar where it kind of bites the back of the head. It just goes for wherever it can, I think. This is the first target animal of the episode, which is, of course, the Fossa,
Or fus.
or Foos, yes.
Interesting thing about the Malagasy language is that a lot of the time they will drop the last vowel from a word which ends in a vowel. So Malagasy becomes Malagas, the capital city, and Antananarivo becomes Antananarive.
I've heard it be pronounced Tanner as well, as like a little, or Tanny, is it?
Tanner is the colonial name. It's like a short version. But I do think that especially the tendency to drop vowels, I think that might be a dialect. Some Malagasy people I met in Andasibe called it the Fusa,
Right, okay.
but other people called it the Fus or the Fush.
Yeah, I've heard it pronounced quite a few different ways. I used to call it a Fossa, which is probably completely wrong.
That's the intuitive way. I
That's like
think.
the westernized version, isn't it? Now, of course, Deadly 60 is primarily aimed at younger audiences, but that doesn't mean other people of any other range can't enjoy it because it's so educational.
And am I right in thinking that the Foos is a lemur specialist? I know it predates on lemurs, but
Well, I think because they're the main source of prey on the islanders in terms of how big they are, they're probably the only thing it would target. I've never heard of any cases of it eating other animals like tenrecs or rodents. I imagine they probably would go for them if they had the chance.
well, I was thinking a lot of big cats will take a wide variety of prey.
Yes. The individual he's watching at the moment has got a tag around its neck, which is for tracking, so they can monitor it, which is pretty cool.
Well, that must be a nightmare.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's very comfortable.
Well, no, the other thing is, while I was in Madagascar, we did some radio telemetry work with diadem chifak. The problem that we had was that the signal, when you're trying to do that kind of radio tracking in really thick, dense jungle, the signal ends up just bouncing off the trees and it becomes really hard to locate and narrow down. Not to mention just carrying the big transmitters through dense jungle is nearly impossible.
Oh, they look like big kind of TV aerials, don't they?
Yeah, they're a nightmare.
It must be difficult in a forest to locate anything like that, yeah. Especially with all the sounds of the forest in between as well. So the Fusa's range is quite widespread. They're all over the island, in fact. Just the center is where they're not sort of found, which is interesting. So their range and habitat must be quite a lot.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So I think Karindi is quite a dry forest. It's not a rainforest, definitely, but it's still got quite a lot of vegetation.
Hmm.
So even with the tracker, they're having a hard time finding it, which is goes to show how elusive and well adapted to being an ambush predator they are.
Is she scavenging? She must be quite habituated to people.
Yeah, it's interesting because she's by the garbage tip at the moment in their
Hmm.
camp.
Yeah, and as I understand it, they don't tend to come down to ground level particularly often. She's scavenging. She's scavenging in the rubbish tip.
I suppose it's an easy source of food if the lemurs are not around. She's got something wrong with her eye.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why she's scavenging. She can't hunt so well.
Yeah, it might just be the camera reflecting, but it looked like she might have a cataract in her right eye as well.
Yeah. Steve's enthusiasm.
I mean, wouldn't you be?
Yeah, that's just exactly how I'd feel. The great thing about Steve Backshire is how enthusiastic he is and how much energy he brings to well, it's not a performance, but like, the energy he brings to the way he presents stuff in this show.
Classic baobab tree.
Love the baobabs.
Oh, brown lemurs. I saw loads of those.
Are they, in terms of lemurs, are they quite common?
I think so. So they would come in. We stayed in, it wasn't quite a hotel, but like a series of small guest houses.
Yeah.
Around sort of, I think it was on the fringes of Mandasa Bay National Park, and the brown lemurs would come right onto the hotel grounds. And there were so many other species within the main body of the park, but the brown lemurs seemed to be the only ones that came out.
By the looks of things, they're pretty happy to just go through your rooms. And
You cheeky monkey.
What did Steve just call it?
yeah, he calls it a monkey, which I mean, I know this is a show aimed at younger audiences and kids, but for God's sake.
Wow, yeah, so it really looks like it's fairly universal that brown lemurs get pretty used to people.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then we've got some bouncing shifaks or shifaka. These are the Verus shifaka.
So again, I don't know how common this is throughout all of Madagascar or whether it's a regional dialect, but a lot of I suppose it was more scientists and students that I would talk to about the shifak. Instead of using the word shifak, they would tend to refer to it by its genus name, Propithecus.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. The Malagasy name for these guys is actually, I assume shifak is a Malagasy word. They call it sadabe, which means many colours. So sada means colour, and then bay is a suffix meaning big.
Yeah, so the species we're looking at here is not the most brightly coloured of the others in their family. There's the Cockerel shifaka, which has the lovely dark reddish coat on the front, and there's the Didems, which has a more sort of yellowish grey coat, doesn't it?
Now that I think about it, sadabe might specifically refer to the diadem shifak. I'm not 100% sure.
I suppose it depends on where the island you see them, because I think some are quite restricted. Like there's the silky shifaka, which is incredibly rare and is almost completely white. And they're still looking for Fusa now because the lemurs are on edge and they're making alarm calls, which is interesting behaviour to witness.
I was somewhat under the impression that foos were quite nocturnal, but this one's hunting during the day, so I must have got the wrong impression.
I think they are generally nocturnal, but I don't think they're exclusively. So maybe the lemurs have just spotted it and that's why they're on alert.
That's so cute.
Yeah, baby lemurs are very, very cute. The proportions are so weird as well. The Shifarks are incredibly long legs. And they're so long, in fact, that they can't walk on all fours, so they have to do the bouncing method. So again, this is more stock footage where you can see videos of the Fossa hunting a lemur, which is quite amazing.
That's interesting. So out of curiosity, I guess the environment kind of looks different now that I'm thinking about it, but you seem very good at spotting when a documentary uses stock footage. What do you look for?
Often it's like the quality of the image. Sometimes it's slightly blurrier because it's from an older documentary. Typically, it's another BBC documentary, usually like an Attenborough show, because he's done so much.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah. But usually it's stuff that you wouldn't expect to see from the crew of Deadly 60 filming at the time, because they're usually documenting everything they do. And this stuff looks more, I don't know if professional is the right word, but it's like it looks more like it's from a sort of standard narrated documentary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd always assumed that they kind of would collect both kinds of footage intentionally with a view of putting a story together and getting that kind of really high quality footage every time.
Well, it depends on what they've got in the archives, I suppose, because the BBC just has all this to hand because they've been around for so long and they've got so many nature documentaries under their belts.
Yeah, and if they've already filmed Foos hunting Shafak, there is no point in sending a team out to do it again.
Well, unless they happened upon it by accident or chance, which they didn't in this case, but this is just to explain and to show viewers what happens, really.
Well, I bet I'll be noticing that in every documentary I watch now. Thanks, Al.
That's all right. Well, once you start seeing it, you notice it a bit more because there's a certain few clips that just play in a lot of things. It happens in all sorts of shows.
Like the Wilhelm scream, I never noticed that it was
Oh,
everywhere
yes.
until I learned what it was.
The Wilhelm scream is one of those examples. Yeah, that's a very common trope. So Deadly 60 is like it's sort of a young audience's way to get into nature because perhaps David Attenborough's documentary is a bit too
It's a different target audience, isn't it?
yeah, that's it. So it would be perhaps less engaging because it's very quick cut, this show, and it's got lots of funky music and energetic presenters, and it's presented in such a way that it keeps you entertained, which is the point, I suppose. So Steve and the team have just discovered another Fossa just underneath their camp, which is quite interesting.
Fossa's just found a nice patch of shade underneath one of the huts that we're sleeping in.
What do you mean a Foos just showed up under his hut? I'm not okay with this.
It's probably been there for quite a while, hasn't it? There's two of them.
They have to be so habituated to people, right?
Well, if they're living around the camp, they must be, yeah. And they both seem to have radio collars on, so yeah, they're very well monitored, these two.
I would imagine that a bit of the surprise is hammed up for camera. Like you have to
Yes.
assume that they picked this camp because they were habituated so they could get good shots of it, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you stand a better chance of seeing them like this than trying to find them in a forest.
Oh, for sure. As a filmmaker, it makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they wouldn't do this in a typical nature documentary. They'd want to try and show it in its wild habitat, but I guess in this case you can't always get that, and it's much easier to film them like this.
Like we were saying about the target audience, if you're a kid watching this, you want to see these close-ups. You want to see people getting close to animals.
Yeah, and I think Deadly 60 does that really well because almost every animal presented in the show is always right there, which is really helpful to see like the size and the shape and how it behaves.
And in that sense, the stock footage works quite nicely because it does give you the chance to see those truly wild behaviours.
Yeah, of course. So I think Steve said that these two are brothers. I wonder if they stay together all the way through their life.
I think they're pretty solitary, is that right?
Yes, I mean most ambush predators are, but I think Fossa are as well because they're not closely related to any other carnivores really, apart from the other ones in Madagascar. It's hard to really know what's going to happen because they're quite a strange little group of animals.
And they made it on the Deadly 60.
They did, as they should. If they're the largest land carnivore in Madagascar, then yeah, of course.
Mhm.
Here's something that always bugs me: the size thing on when they do the little ratings of the animal's stats. They always do the size, of course, but it's always completely wrong, and this messes with my OCD.
How is it wrong?
Well, I don't know if it's wrong, but it's just it doesn't seem quite sort of accurate because you see it's got two for the Fossa here, but then they also give two to a chameleon later on. So how does that work? Chameleons are not the same size.
Okay, yeah, you know what? That's reasonable. Steve, what are you doing?
We do the show all again right now.
And now we're going to the rainforest.
Okay, here we go. Chameleons.
Carpet chameleon.
I think it's a Parsons chameleon.
All right, I'm just gonna hang up my herpetologist hat and go home right now. In my defense, I do snakes, not lizards, but that's still quite shameful.
How dare you? Well, I think I only said Parsons because I think that's the largest species of chameleon.
It is.
Yeah, Steve's doing a little size comparison between that and I think he's got a Brachysia on his other hand.
No, surely he's got to be in a reptile zoo or something here, right?
Yes, I think he's at some kind of zoo.
I was determined to find one and I didn't. And I just feel like if he had found one in the wild, they would have filmed him finding it in the wild.
Absolutely.
Big achievement.
I mean, if you're interested in looking for a documentary where they do that, the show Weird Creatures with Nick Baker, there's an episode about Brachysia where he goes and finds one in the wild.
Nick Baker was one of my first wildlife idols. What first got me into entomology was Nick Baker's Bug Book, my absolute Bible when I was a child. I was like trying to make my own pooters to suck up invertebrates.
But yeah, that show in particular really highlights animal oddballs, and that was the show that got me into eyes because there was an episode on eyes.
Oh, do you guys?
I do like eyes, actually. This is a shameless little plug. I made a little video about eyes, which is on my channel. They're my favourite animal, and Nick Baker is responsible for that.
Nick, what have you done?
He knows what he's done.
He said one of the smallest reptiles. Is there a species that is smaller, or is this Brachysia but not Brachysia nano, which is the smallest chameleon?
It might not be the smallest of the small, but I think generally Brachysia are the smallest reptiles, aren't they?
Yeah, he said one of.
Yes, so maybe he's just not trying to be too specific. If you go for definite, then there's always a chance that you might be wrong later on.
For sure. In fact, they were talking about this in the most recent podcast episode, like how Steve said he's always really cagey about calling the blue whale the biggest animal to have ever lived.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's quite funny in this shot is the Parsons chameleon he's got in his other hand is eyeing up the Brachysia like it's a snack. I suppose it's the right sort of size for its prey items, isn't it?
Potentially. I don't know whether they would eat other chameleons, but
Their diet's mainly just insects, isn't it?
yeah. But most animals will be a little opportunistic if the right meal comes along.
Yeah. Oh, this is more stock footage again. Actually, I think this is from the show Dragons Alive, which is a BBC documentary again, which is all about reptiles. So now Steve is definitely in a zoo because there's brick wall behind him. And the reason the chameleons are a contender for the Deadly 60 is because of their unique hunting method, which he's going to explain in a minute. So Steve's just put a mirror in front of this chameleon, which is treating it as a rival. It's quite amazing to watch that. The colours as well. The colours are amazing on these animals.
It's incredible to see how they get fired up when they're stressed.
Yeah.
I've seen them do it, pick up a wild chameleon.
They're such grumpy animals. Look at that threat display. Oh, and they gape with their mouth open and they start hissing.
Intimidating.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with a chameleon. I think I heard somewhere that some of the Malagasy people are kind of fearful of chameleons because of their appearance.
Yes, absolutely. Chameleons and snakes.
So I think this was from ZooQuest with David Attenborough that he said that in order to stop anyone stealing their equipment at night in the car, I think they placed a chameleon just on the steering wheel to watch over things.
I read that. And interestingly, I believe that all lemurs were really heavily protected. And this was the only species that Attenborough was able to take home with him because they didn't want any of the other lemurs to leave the island. Was the mouse lemur, because the mouse lemur looks so dissimilar to other lemur species.
Yes, I suppose because they've diversified so much from their early kind of ancestor that came to the island, they must be on different evolutionary paths and therefore not have much in common, so they look quite different.
And they're so cute.
You like mouse lemurs, don't you?
They're so cute.
Which species were you monitoring when you were in Madagascar?
So I'm pretty sure it was Goodman's mouse lemur in the
Okay.
area that we were in. I think there were 2 mouse lemur species potentially, and we also had Sibries and Crossley's dwarf lemur, which look not too
Yeah,
dissimilar
they're
from the
quite
mouse
interesting
lemurs.
to look at.
Yeah, we only saw one dwarf lemur, and I don't know which species it was. They were definitely there within the Eastern Highlands, where we spent most of our time. I think they were within Andassa Bay as well.
It's amazing how many species there are.
Yeah, and I think what you also tend to see in Madagascar is a lot of speciation and like microendemism, where species in a certain area with especially geographical barriers for whatever reason. I suppose you'll get very small phenotypic changes. Like if you look at the shifax, there's so many different kinds of shifax, even though they roughly fill the same kind of niche. And look very similar.
Yeah, some definitely are more adapted to like the spiny forest, which is in the south of the island, and others are more rainforest specialists.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that makes sense. What was interesting about the area of Madagascar that we were working in, the protected area is bounded on two sides by big, big rivers, and then everywhere else, just the sheer altitude means it's very isolated. And that means a lot of the species within that area are just not found outside of it because they can't cross. Not all of them, but a fair few.
So that makes it a very interesting hotspot for biodiversity.
Yes, absolutely. That's why it's now been designated as a protected area.
Excellent. Well, at least it is. And I think I'm right in saying that most, if not all, lemurs can't swim. So having rivers, as well as obviously the ocean surrounding the island, means that they are even more unique because they can't spread.
Yes, and I mean, certainly they have to some extent.
Yeah. We were supposed to be talking about chameleons here. How did this happen?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, this we're being showcased the amazing tongue ability of chameleons. That doesn't sound right, but the way they shoot their tongue out to catch their prey is quite unique amongst reptiles. So that one he was just demonstrating that to was a panther chameleon, I think. See how the color kind of lights up after they've got their food as well. Amazing animals. Looks like a great enclosure for them too, actually.
I'm so envious of countries that can keep herpetofauna in outdoor enclosures.
I know.
We don't have many native species, so it's very, very difficult. Or if you want to keep species in outdoor enclosures, you're very limited. But for example, in Australia, they can only keep native species there, so outdoor enclosures are much more normalized and they just look fantastic.
But yeah, Madagascar too seems to have a fair few zoos that keep their native species, especially for conservation breeding programs. And as you were saying, yeah, it's hard to keep native reptile species and amphibians in outdoor enclosures, but it has been tried and tested a few times. The British Wildlife Centre in Surrey has a few outdoor snake enclosures, which are quite interesting.
So does Wildwood Devon now. I don't think they've got their snakes in yet, or at least they didn't last time I visited. But I actually saw sand lizards basking in an outdoor enclosure, which was super cool.
That's really cool. I think Chester Zoo's got sand lizards now in a similar setup. So obviously they'd go and hibernate or brumate in the colder months, but in the warmer months you stand a chance of seeing them. And so the chameleon inches its way onto the Deadly 60 with its characteristic wobbly walk.
I saw one swim.
Oh really? I didn't know they could swim.
No, neither did I. I was watching it make its way along a grassy bank down by a rice paddy, and it just kind of kept going, and then suddenly it was in the water. It wasn't swimming long distances. There was lots of kind of tufty vegetation, so it was swimming between tufts, but it was very much swimming.
That's very interesting. You don't expect that from a body shape like that. I don't mean to be rude to the chameleons, but yeah. So now we're on the lookout for another reptile species, one that's quite different to the chameleons. Lovely rainforest they're walking through at the moment. It looks absolutely untouched, apart from obviously the path they're walking on.
Species like this peculiar and aptly named giraffe-necked weevil.
Super cool. I'm pretty sure they had those in Shinjariv. I did see a really cool spider. The neck wasn't quite that extreme, but the spider's cephalothorax had a very similar shape to that.
Oh, okay. So that there's those kind of spiders that build their webs across rivers, don't they? They can try and catch dragonflies going down.
Yeah, this one. Actually, this one made its home in the long drop.
Oh, right.
Not on the walls.
Interesting.
We did see a lot of really interesting weevils, pollinating weevils, but sadly no giraffe-necked weevils.
Is there a particular time of year that they would come out, or is it just bad luck?
I don't actually know, but I will say that the time of year we went was end of April, beginning of May, which in Madagascar, of course, in the southern hemisphere is winter.
Okay.
So it was a less than ideal time of year for a lot of the cold-blooded or ectothermic species that I would have loved to see.
Right, okay. They are amazing, though. They're so bizarre, like everything on this island. It's nice that they highlight even the injury now in the show here, because obviously they're not going to make it on the Deadly 60, but they're important to showcase because of how unique and rare they are. Scuttling spider, look at that.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Oh, I saw one of those. We had a few of those hanging around our camp.
That must have been quite nerve-wracking for some people.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure some of the guides said, I think it was that species, they have quite a nasty venom. They cause a lot of bruising and swelling around the bite area, and they can send you to hospital.
Right, well, it's just as well you're among other people there, in case that would happen. Now, Steve has been set a challenge by the local guides to find the next target animal, which is supremely well camouflaged on a tree branch somewhere in this little sector he's looking in.
Are they making him find a chameleon?
It's not a chameleon this time. It's another endemic species of reptile.
Oh, is it? I can't think of the name of the gecko.
So I'm not entirely sure which species of gecko this one is, but it's one of the leaf-tailed geckos.
Yeah, is that Sakura? If it is, I saw that exact species.
Oh, that's cool. How did you see it? You can see how amazingly well camouflaged they are. It's kind of blended into the lichen on the bark of the tree here.
I guess they're not going to mention the exact species.
I don't think they do.
Amazing. And it was one of these, it looked a lot like that. Europlatus, that was it. I couldn't think of the name.
Okay.
I wonder if it's Europlatus Sakura.
It could be. I think they just call it leaf-tailed gecko in this episode, so I'm not entirely sure. But look at how amazing its colour pattern is with the kind of mossy green and browns it's got on it to make it look like it's just part of like a twig or something.
They are stunning.
They're amazing things. You can see their kind of underside is lined with these little frilly scales which sort of spill out over them, which sort of helps it blend in even more. Even their eyeballs are camouflaged as well. This one doesn't look particularly happy at being disturbed.
I mean, you wouldn't be, would you?
No. Steve's face is amazing when he gets excited like this.
They look like something out of Lord of the Rings. I say this as someone who's never seen Lord of the Rings.
I mean, you're pretty close. Yeah, they're quite Tolkien-esque, yeah. And of course, there are the defense. If they are spotted, which in this case it has been, they do tend to jump like frogs, which is interesting. They do look very prehistoric as well. This is like the third time a reptile or an amphibian has jumped on Steve's face. That happened in Lost Land of the Volcano as well. Okay, we're back to some more stock footage showing how the camouflage works.
That's not a gecko.
No, that wasn't a gecko. That was, I think that was a collared lemur or maybe a crowned lemur. And of course, leaf-tailed geckos get their name because their tail is very flat, kind of like a beaver's tail. See, they only get 1 for the size stat, whereas the chameleon gets 2, but, whatever.
To be fair, I guess it depends what metric you're judging it off.
Yeah, it bugs me, that's all.
Same, but it's a lot shorter than a chameleon, and it probably weighs a lot less.
That's true. So now, when I first watched this episode, I was silently hoping that my favourite target animal would appear in this episode. And of course, as Steve says here,
We've saved the most bizarre beast till last.
and that is very true. This appears to be the same, maybe it's the same place they filmed the chameleons earlier, because it's definitely a zoo.
That would make sense.
And the whole atmosphere of this section feels so spooky because that's the way they framed it to make it mysterious and bizarre. Of course, this is the eye, the weirdest lemur of Madagascar.
But eye feeding signs are actually not that hard to find.
So that's great to hear because obviously they are endangered. But if you can find signs of them, it's good to know that they are still around.
Although they can move, I think females can move as much as 15 kilometers in a night.
Yeah, they have a very large range, don't they? I don't think they stay where they are for very long.
Which I suppose would make it quite hard to know how many you had in an area. I don't know how territorial they are.
I think they are generally solitary, except when they've got young.
Or I have heard of eyes, I believe, congregating at sites where they're having their diet supplemented by people. So
Yes.
people put out food and they're quite easy to see. And it becomes a tourist attraction. People come to see the eyes, which come because they're being fed. And I'm pretty sure stations get multiple individuals.
Where can I sign up for this? So yeah, the IIs do like to raid coconut plantations for the coconut palms, which gets them in trouble with the locals because they obviously don't want their crops being depleted like that. And the other unfortunate thing about AIs, of course, is they are considered fadi or taboo by many of the locals who treat them as pests and or evil spirits. So they are usually killed if they're discovered. So even Steve is being kind of almost creeped out by this animal, which I suppose is, you can understand why some of the locals would feel the same, because it has got a very odd appearance.
I'm sorry, I know you love them, but they're weird.
They are weird, That's part of the reason I love them. So this one is in a captive breeding program, I think. And because they had to go to a zoo to find it, it just goes to show how elusive they are in the wild. That they couldn't even... Well, but maybe they did go looking for them, but I don't think they say.
I think it's interesting that he describes that reflective layer To me, that's a little bit misleading. It does kind of sound like he's suggesting that that's a unique feature to the eye when it's called the tapetum lucidum, and any animal that has any kind of eye shine, what you're seeing is the tapetum lucidum reflecting. So it's very common in the animal kingdom. It's still cool, and it's a really awesome adaptation that a lot of nocturnal species have. But it's worth saying that that is by no means unique to the eye.
No, of all the aspects, that's not one of
It's
its
not one I've
none
highlighted.
of it. Yeah. I wonder where this place is that they're in, because I know there's a zoo in Antananarivo.
That's what I was about to say. I wonder if it's Tanner Zoo. The only airport in mainland Madagascar that takes international flights is in Antananarivo.
I suppose that makes sense as it being the capital city.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is more stock footage. I think this is from the documentary Predators, which was an old BBC documentary. There's some very interesting footage here of the unique foraging ability possessed by the AI called percussive foraging. Of course, if you want to know more, please do check out my video. That's another shameless plug.
So, fun fact, my master's research is actually, my study species is beavers, but the technique we're using is actually one that's been adapted from a paper that was looking at ii population genetics.
That's very interesting because they do share very similar teeth anatomy, don't they?
Yeah, the idea is that they're excavating that branch with their finger, and they obviously put it in their mouth to actually get the food, and they're leaving traces of their saliva. And beavers, very, very different feeding strategy, but when they gnaw on wood, similarly, they leave distinctive woody feeding remains with saliva on, and you can sample that saliva.
That's quite a weird comparison, isn't it? You wouldn't think that from these completely unrelated species.
Yeah, but that's kind of where the inspiration came from. Yes, I'll make sure they are included in my master's acknowledgements in my dissertation.
Now, I think these close-ups, this is part of the stock footage still, these close-ups of the finger and the teeth going into the wood look like they were filmed in some kind of studio, because how would you get that shot in the wild?
In fact, it might even have been you that mentioned that in London Zoo they were able to set up artificial feeders that allowed them to replicate that natural behaviour without obviously bringing in bits of wood.
It's crazy how they do it. And in fact, a few years back, I went to Durrell Wildlife Park in Jersey and did an experience with eyes there, because they've got quite a large group of them there for captive breeding purposes. And we actually got to go inside the enclosure, which was amazing, and see it feed and give it some bamboo filled with mealworms. And at the end of it, I've got some bamboo sticks which have been gnawed by eyes in my room. That was some of my favourite things.
Super cool. Why did you never show me that?
I can't remember if I did. You'll just have to come
You
and
didn't. I
come and
would
see
remember.
again.
I didn't know the Aya experience. Would you recommend it? Was it good?
I would definitely recommend it, but I don't know if they do it anymore, because last time I went to Jersey, we asked if we could do that again, and they said basically no, because they're quite sensitive animals and we don't want to disturb them. But that was quite a few years ago.
I think the thing about zoos and welfare standards is that the more we understand about these animals, the more we're able to update the licenses, the regulations, these experiences in order to reflect that.
Yes, definitely. And in fact, when we went that time, the second time, one of the main enclosures for them was closed off because they share the enclosure with some Malagasy giant jumping rats, which had just given birth. So they didn't want people going in to disturb them.
Were they Ansangi?
Yes, I think that's another word for them.
The zoo I used to work at, we had Ansangi.
But yeah, a lot of zoos, well, zoos that keep eyes sometimes do have mixed interspecies enrichment with the Ansangi together, which is quite interesting. I guess since they're both predominantly nocturnal and they wouldn't really bother each other because they're both in different positions in the enclosures.
Crikey.
So the eye just swiped at Steve there because I think he got a bit too close to it, which is, wouldn't expect such aggression out of quite a small animal like that, but I suppose that's part of maybe why they're feared by the locals, because they would lash out if you get too close to them. I think even just the way they move is kind of weird, because they don't look right.
Also has long incisor teeth like a rodent that never stop growing.
Oh, I didn't know that about its teeth.
Yeah, so their teeth are continuously growing throughout their life.
Is that a trait that other primates have? I was kind of under the impression that in mammals it was.
It's unique to the eye and rodents. So yeah, I think they're the only primate that has teeth like that.
Yeah. Wow, amazing.
Which is crazy that that's convergently evolved alongside rodents.
Yeah, super cool. Rodents do it better though.
Well, rodents got there first. Yeah, I mean you can't say no to a face like that. Look at that thing, great little animal. I'm glad that also this show highlights this species because a lot of people still haven't heard of this animal.
Really? I thought it was fairly iconic.
I think nowadays, I think it's more well known, but it used to be much more obscure. I think a lot of people didn't or still don't know what it is and where it comes from. Because I think the only pop culture rendition of it is Maurice from the Madagascar films.
Yeah, and I suppose visually, you wouldn't think it was a lemur, would you?
No, I mean you wouldn't even think it was a primate by the look of it. That's part of the reason why when people first discovered it, they thought it was some kind of rodent.
So was it originally classified in Rodentia?
I think it might have been either that or like a squirrel, which is obviously a rodent. So yeah, maybe it was originally, but because obviously it's got 5 fingers or 4 fingers and a thumb and front-facing eyes, it's more easy to recognize it as a primate. So the eye is the last animal to make it onto the list in this episode, and rightly so, in my opinion.
The ii is rated 2 in terms of size.
Yes, the same size as a chameleon, apparently.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Do I see a legless lizard?
I think that's a giant earthworm.
Oh, it's an earthworm. Right? It looks so much like scales in that first shot.
I don't even think that's one of the contenders on the Deadly 60. It's just something he finds. This is the next time for the next episode. I think this is Uganda?
But we're not doing it in order because that would make too much sense.
Of course, yeah. No, we're just looking at the next time. So yeah, episode 12 is Uganda, where he looks at gorillas and chimps and baboons as well. So that's a very primate-heavy episode.
But we are not taking you to Uganda in the next episode of this, whatever this series is. We are going to be going all the way to the other hemisphere. So that was Madagascar. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join us again next time where we're going to be going to a very different island in the Northern Hemisphere, and one that will probably be quite familiar to a lot of our viewers. Al, you want to tell them where we're going next time?
Well, this, of course, is our native country, which is, of course, the UK, the United Kingdom. And it might surprise you to know that it's also full of dangerous, deadly animals. Although on the surface it looks quite plain, it's definitely got potential when you dig a bit deeper.
And as a wildlife ecologist, I am super excited to really delve into the ecology of some of our native species that I work with.
I'm afraid the harvest mice will not make an appearance, though.
Harvest mice are so deadly.
Explain to me how they are deadly.
If you're a locust, they're deadly.
Well, I can't argue there. And on that note, thank you for watching our second episode of the podcast. We'll be back soon with the UK.
See you next time for some oddly specific mouse discourse.
Goodbye.